to season 4 of the Park2Park podcast, where we compare theme park offerings from coast to coast. We don't always see eye to eye, but in the end, we try, and this episode will certainly be seeing things.
Wow.
It is not Society of Explorers and Adventurers sea, but rather the Big Blue World sea. CJ, how are you?
Oh my goodness, Allie, I'm doing well. We got pretty much nothing from Hurricane Idalia, so that's good. How are you doing? It's Wednesday.
Oh my gosh, it's Wednesday. Oh, the week is half over. We are gearing up for a 3-day weekend. This episode comes out in like 4 days.
I totally forgot. It's a 3-day weekend. Let's go.
Yeah, it's Labor Day weekend. I am seeing 3 movies this weekend because it is still too hot to exist.
We have park reservations for Magic Kingdom on Monday. I'm just getting over a cold. So far, the rest of my family seems okay. So if we continue to stay healthy, that's what we'll be doing on Monday. But on Saturday, we're going to a new restaurant that opened at Epcot. I think it's called Shikisai. I might be mispronouncing that. It's a Japanese restaurant, and I'm excited to try it out.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds like the Japanese pavilion.
Yes. So have you ever eaten in Japan?
No.
Okay, so when you're in Japan, you know there's the gift shop on the first floor. The second floor, there's 2 restaurants. Okay. One of them is Teppon Edo, which is on the left side, and that's like where they cook on the table in front of you. And the front part, the right side, that was Tokyo Dining. And Tokyo Dining has been closed for a while, and they're just now opening Shikisai. It opened like 2 days ago, I think. So yeah, we're going to go have some sushi. I'm going to eat some sushi. Devin's going to eat, I don't know, teriyaki chicken.
Something cooked?
Yes. So hopefully it's good.
Well, don't let the subjects of today's episode hear you talk about eating sushi, because they might have words to say to you about that.
You're right. Like, just keep swimming away from the fisher.
Yeah, swim away from CJ. Because today we are talking... So, let me take 2 steps backwards. We decided that this season was going to be the IP-season, the season of IP-based attractions. And we kind of roughly put these in opening date order. So that means that we are starting with all of our Finding Nemo attractions. But wait, I hear you saying, Finding Nemo came out in like 2003, I think? Why is this the earliest? Well, dear listener, it's because the original submarines opened in 1959, which makes them the oldest, and it is now Finding Nemo. So that is why, dear listener, we are doing Finding Nemo first.
That is accurate.
So we're not just going to be discussing the Nemo subs. We're going to be discussing all of the Nemo properties at the Disney parks, which is the Nemo Submarines, The Seas with Nemo and Friends, Finding Nemo, the Big Blue and Beyond, and Turtle Talk with Crush.
Yeah, lots of Nemo stuff. And I didn't really realize how prevalent Nemo was in the park until we started like going through the attractions, and I realized like, oh, there's a lot of Nemo in the parks.
There is a lot of Nemo in the parks.
Yeah.
So I know in a previous episode, in a previous season, we already talked a little bit about the Nemo submarines, so we're probably not going to spend too much time on that, but it's still going to be mentioned in, every category. We're just, I think, going to focus more on the other ones. But as usual, we start out with our favorite things about each of these attractions. So I'm going to call on CJ for her favorite thing about the Nemo submarines.
I think I probably said this when we talked about it originally, but I like that it's a unique ride system. How many Disney rides do you get to actually go in a submarine that's like truly underwater?
Right? That is pretty cool. Yeah. I like how colorful it is, and I think it's, colors are different when you're under the water, and I think they did a good job of still portraying that while also being extremely colorful.
Mm-hmm. So. Well, and I think too, it says something about like the artistry and the engineering that went behind being able to make sure that even underwater it would remain colorful and vibrant.
Yes. Next up, the seas with Nemo and Friends. CJ, what's your favorite thing?
I love that this ride goes through the aquarium. I think that's very cool.
Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. The fact that there are real fishies involved, that is so cool. That is really clever. Next, we have Finding Nemo, The Big Blue and Beyond.
So, confession, Finding Nemo is not one of my favorite Pixar movies. I just, don't really connect to the story of that or Finding Dory. My kids really like it. I just really don't. And I've only seen Finding Nemo, The Big Blue and Beyond once. I'm pretty sure it was 4th of July last year. Yeah, that sounds about right. So my favorite thing is that it's an air conditioning break in Animal Kingdom, which is a really hot park, and we need to sit down in the air conditioning sometimes.
All right. So you have seen it precisely one more time than I have. I quickly watched it on YouTube at 1.5 speed while CJ was doing a lot of the research for this episode. And I just gotta say that Disney is really, really good at musical theater animals.
Yeah.
The Lion King, Finding Nemo, the carpet in Aladdin, which isn't technically an animal, but the same concept, the puppetry and the costuming and the sets. It's amazing.
On that note, why didn't the Aladdin show have a Boo?
I'm not sure. But I would wager that it's because when you're trying to condense a 90-minute movie, thereabouts, into a 30-minute show, thereabouts, something's got to get cut, and the animal companion is the first thing to go.
But they cut a Boo, but added an entire song that wasn't in the movie.
Okay, well, Jasmine has to have feelings too. And it's quicker to convey those feelings and that complicated feelings and backstory through a 3-minute song than to do a whole scene that's boring for kids explaining the political situation in Agrabah.
Lucky bird inside a gilded cage.
Our favorite from the Aladdin show. But we are not talking about Aladdin today.
I was just bored out of my mind during that song. She just pranced around the stage, the set didn't change. There was no groundbreaking dancing. It was just Lucky bird inside a gilded cage.
Did you watch Howard on Disney Plus?
No, it's on my list, and we have one TV in the house, and when it's on, I'm not in charge anymore. Right. Yeah.
So one of the things that Howard Ashman said is that every Disney princess has to have an I Want song. And that's Jasmine's I Want song.
Wouldn't A Whole New World be that? Aladdin saying, I can show you a whole new world, and Jasmine's like, yeah, I want a whole new world, let's go.
No, I would say that Lucky Bird Inside a Gilded Cage is her I Want song, because it's I want this freedom. I want the freedom that a bird has.
Okay. Fine. Yeah. Okay. Anyways.
Finding Nemo, The Big Blue and Beyond. The puppetry is amazing. The puppets are amazing. The costumes, the set. That Darla terrified me. Disney knows how to put on a really good musical spectacle, and this was no exception.
Yeah.
We are, for purposes of favorite things, we are going to be lumping Turtle Talk with Crush together, though we will be discussing them separately, as you and I know there's one on each coast. But what's your favorite thing about Turtle Talk with Crush, CJ?
It's always funny. I mean, yes. It's if you're looking for a laugh, go see Turtle Talk with Crush.
Yeah. For me, it's the childlike wonder when he talks to a kid and the kid's like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to Crush. That is the coolest thing ever. And I also, today, I learned how they do the show, how it is created. And that, we'll talk about that later, but that blew my mind, and that is going to contribute to my childlike wonder when I watched Turtle Talk.
And since you told me before we started recording, I'm now wondering if that's also how they do Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor.
Ooh. I would expect so.
Yeah, I think so. All right, let's roll on, shall we?
All right. So starting with the opening dates, the original Submarine Voyage opened on June 14th, 1959. The Finding Nemo version opened on June 9th, 2007 as a soft opening, and the full opening was June 11th, 2007.
Okay, The Seas with Nemo and Friends is next, and there are a variety of opening dates for this because the pavilion, the entire pavilion is called The Seas with Nemo and Friends, but the ride is also called The Seas with Nemo and Friends. So there is like some confusion there. But let's talk about like when it originally opened. So when the pavilion originally opened, there was a ride there that, like the pavilion today, I'm confused on what the name was. I've seen it referred to as the Living Seas. I've seen it called the Sea Cabs, and I've seen it called Caribbean Coral Reef Ride. So the ride that was originally in the Living Seas Pavilion opened January 15th, 1982, closed October 21st, 2001. I've seen like a lot of different dates, but I think that's what it was. The exhibits inside remained open as the Living Seas, and it fully closed on August 21st, 2005, when it transformed into the Seas with Nemo and Friends. The ride, I believe, opened January 24th, 2007.
Wow. That is...
Yeah. There's a lot going on there.
Yes. It's a complicated history.
Now, the Finding Nemo show at Animal Kingdom, this is the second iteration of the Finding Nemo show. The first one, previews began November 5th, 2006, and it fully opened January 24th, 2007. It closed March 15th, 2020, when the parks closed. And after the parks reopened, they announced a new show would be coming. And that new show, Finding Nemo Big Blue and Beyond, opened June 13th, 2022. So it's just over a year old.
So I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know, were they planning on ending the run of that show and creating a new one?
I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if something was in the works because Finding Dory had come out and, but there's also a time gap between that, the release of Finding Dory and the parks closing and all that. So I don't know.
There's not really any Finding Dory references in the new show.
No, and that kind of surprised me, and I think we all expected more references to the new movie. I don't know.
All right. Well, Turtle Talk with Crush at California Adventure opened on July 15th, 2005.
And Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot opened November 16th, 2004. Next up.
Yeah, we've got our fun facts, history, and trivia. Tomorrowland originally had a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea film exhibit, and then the Submarine Voyage opened, and when that closed in 1998, the rethemes that were rumored were Atlantis, The Little Mermaid, a complete destruction of the lagoon and the ride itself. But in 2005, it was announced that Finding Nemo would be taking over, and it did, and that's the submarines we have today.
All right, so The Seas with Nemo and Friends. There's some fun facts for the ride and the pavilion here. So originally, like I said, it was called the Living Seas. You used to watch a video, like an informational video, and then board a hydrolator, and then you would get on a sea cab, which is like just a ride vehicle, to Sea Base Alpha, which would take you through the aquarium. And when you're on the sea cabs, you could see the aquarium on both sides. Today, you can only see the aquarium on one side when you're on the ride. Then you would disembark at the visitor center and you can check out the aquarium exhibits or take the hydrolator back up to the surface. So things have obviously changed since then, but it was like a really all-encompassing experience. So some fun facts. It's the second largest aquarium in the United States. It used to be the first largest, and then one in Georgia opened up that beat it. But it does have 5.7 million gallons of water, making it the sixth largest in the world. It's accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, as is Animal Kingdom and Animal Kingdom Lodge. Tours take place in the aquarium, so if you want to do like up close with dolphins, Dive Quest, I think, is another one. There's a couple like dolphin diving tours you can do. And then this is the first full pavilion at Epcot to be based on an IEP, and it's only the second Epcot attraction to be based on an IEP. Allie, do you know the first one?
Is it My Favorite Ride, The Three Caballeros?
No.
Oh.
This is hard because it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, Honey, I Shrunk the?
No.
I think that should count.
I should clarify. We're talking animated film IPs.
This opened after Frozen, right?
What?
I'm sorry, it opened before Frozen. So yes. It wouldn't be Frozen. And obviously it opened...
No. It's an attraction that doesn't exist anymore, so...
Is it an attraction that I've been on?
Maybe?
So no, I have no idea, CJ.
There used to be a film in the Land Pavilion that was called The Circle of Life, an environmental fable.
Okay. How was I supposed to know that?
No, you might know it.
No, of course I don't know that, CJ. What is this, 1995? Come on.
No, and then you're asking me, have I been on it? How am I supposed to know?
Well, I went to Epcot once before Nemo opened, and that time was with you, so yeah, you would know.
I don't remember our itinerary of what attractions we did.
Oh my lord. CJ. She has completely lost it. This has just devolved into giggles.
Chaos.
Yes, chaos giggles.
Okay, so recapping, it's the first pavilion at Epcot to be, like, the first entire pavilion to be based on an IP. The second attraction to be based on an IP, a film IP. Animated film IP. Okay. Moving on to the Finding Nemo show. Before the Finding Nemo show was there were two different shows. One was called Journey into the Jungle Book. The other was called Tarzan Rocks, which you and I saw Tarzan Rocks.
Yes, I remember seeing that one because it was really cool, and they had skateboards.
Yes, and my memory was, like, warped a little bit because I thought the show was outside, and in researching for this episode, I found out that that theater used to be an outdoor amphitheater, but they enclosed it for the Finding Nemo show. So my memory really wasn't warped. It was just the park changed. I didn't realize the park changed. The original show was just called Finding Nemo the Musical. The music was composed by Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, who also did the music for Frozen. March 15th, 2020 was its final performance, as I stated earlier.
For Turtle Talk with Crush at DCA, this was not an opening day attraction. There were two things before Turtle Talk happened. One was called Return to Neverland with Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite. Did I write that down right, CJ?
I think so, but I'm concerned about the veracity of that statement, okay. So take that with a grain of salt.
After that was removed, it became One Man's Dream, and then Turtle Talk.
Let me just put an asterisk on this. I don't remember them showing Return to Neverland. I do remember seeing One Man's Dream in that theater. Okay. I do remember that.
Okay. But as you just said, your memory is warped, so, I mean, we can't count on it.
Okay. The thing about Return to Neverland, I saw one website mention that it was there. And I could not find any other information about what was there beforehand, so...
Okay. So Turtle Talk with Crush can be found in a couple of places. You can see it at Tokyo Disney Sea. That opened on October 1st, 2009. You could have seen this at Hong Kong Disneyland if you were there in summer of 2008. It was there from May 24th to August 10th of that year, and it was not there after that. You can also witness this attraction outside of a Disney park. You can see it at the Animator's Palette restaurant aboard the Disney Cruise Line in the Disney Dream and Disney Fantasy ships. And there was a Turtle Talk with Crush unit donated to the Chalk Bill Holmes Hospital by Walt Disney Imagineering during early 2013 for child patients there. Chalk stands for Children's Hospital of Orange County. This was the first attraction created by Imagineering to be placed in a non-Disney environment, and it operated from 2013 to 2020. Cast members volunteered to go do that twice a day for the sick kids and their siblings. So I think
that's awesome.
Amazing. Yeah, go Disney. Thank you.
And I understand they suspended it in 2020, but I hope they bring it back.
I really hope they do too, because that is a really, really great thing, and it just goes to show like Disney does care, and Disney gives back to the, environment around them.
Yeah, and that's like the hyper local community for Disney.
Yeah,
just right down the street. I have a suggestion on where else they could put it.
Okay.
Aulani.
That would work. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, Hawaii gets like rainstorms occasionally, so that might be a good thing for people to do that's like inside during the rain or something.
All right. I can dig it.
Yep.
Finding Dory elements were added in 2016, and here's the part that is going to blow your mind, hopefully, like it did mine today.
Spoilers, if you don't want to hear how this works, turn down the volume for like 20 seconds.
I will be ruining the magic for approximately the next 20 seconds. So, Crush is an actor / puppeteer whose performance is digitized in real time at approximately 60 frames per second, so that the mouth movements of the puppet like match up, like to display what's on the screen. And that's just the coolest thing.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So, Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot, I don't really have anything to add other than it occupied the space that was once called Module 1C when it was the Living Seas Pavilion, which was the Earth Systems exhibit when it first opened. But Turtle Talk was so popular that it needed to be moved into a bigger space, which happened to be the second pre-show theater they had, which had been unused since 1999. So they took some old space and reutilized it, basically.
So are there two theaters, or is it just one bigger theater?
I think it's just one bigger theater. I'm not 100% sure. It's been a while since I've been in there. But the way they have it set up is a little bit different than DCA, because there's aquariums in the waiting area.
Oh, that's cool. That's way cooler than DCA.
They need a bigger space just for that, backstage access to get into the aquarium.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to where we can find each of these attractions. The Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage is in Disneyland, Tomorrowland, underneath the monorail station.
The Seas with Nemo and Friends is in the World Nature section of Epcot, so if you're looking at the ball from the park entrance, it's off to the right. Yeah, and it's inside the pavilion. And then the Finding Nemo show is hosted in the Theater in the Wild between Dinoland and Everest. Technically, per the map, it's in Dinoland, USA, even though nothing dinosaur themed has ever taken place in that theater.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Turtle Talk with Crush at California Adventure is inside the Animation Academy screening room in Hollywoodland.
And Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot is in the Seas with Nemo and Friends Pavilion. You can enter through the aquarium's exit if you want to, and it's just past the gift shop on the right. Or when you get off the Seas with Nemo and Friends ride, it's to the left, like past the little staircase that's right there.
I have never seen the entrance to this ride at Epcot, or attraction.
At least you haven't been paying attention, I guess.
All right. When you're in line for the Nemo submarines, it is switchbacks underneath the monorail station in Tomorrowland with some rock planters. If the line is long, it'll switch back out from under the monorail station into the sun outside the lagoon, where you can see the seagull saying, "Mine, mine, mine," and Hank the octopus.
So the pavilion entrance and the Seas with Nemo and Friends ride entrance is the same. There's like a pool of water that like splashes occasionally, like waves crashing against rocks, and the seagulls chirp, "Mine, mine, mine." You enter the building, it's really cold and really dark in there. Like it's surprisingly dark in there. And the queue is very long for this ride. I don't know why the queue is so long, but it is. Basically, you walk through like a beach scene, kind of on a boardwalk, and you're slowly making your way toward the water, and it gets like more blue, and you see like ripples projected on the ceiling and on the walls and stuff. And then for the Finding Nemo show, the queue is outside. It's winding around and underneath some trees and some fans, thankfully.
Turtle Talk with Crush at California Adventure. The queue is fully indoors and air conditioned, and it's less of a queue and more of a clump.
Yeah.
You have to like go through the turnstile type things. You're always welcome to exit if you change your mind, but you basically just stand in a waiting area or sit crisscross applesauce on the floor in a waiting area, and then they say, hey, stand back, the doors are going to open, and they open the doors and you go into the theater.
Yeah. Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot, the waiting area has some small aquarium exhibits to look at, which is pretty cool, but it's kind of the same thing. A big clump of people, and then you enter the theater.
Cue music for the Nemo subs. It's instrumental music that might be the actual soundtrack to Finding Nemo, and if it's not, it's a really good imitation of it.
And the Seas with Nemo and Friends ride, it's a lot of dialogue between the characters with some background music from the Finding Nemo movie. The ending scene of the ride features Big Blue World song over and over again. The Finding Nemo show has a lot of original music written for the show, as well as music from the movies, of course.
Both of the Turtle Talks with Crush just have background music. I don't know what that means, CJ. You're the one who put that in.
It's like instrumental music in the background.
Is it like does it sound like Finding Nemo soundtrack? Like,
yeah, kind of like
okay.
oceany music. I don't know how to describe it other than like oceany music.
Okay,
You'll have to go listen to it.
Moving on to ride vehicles, or in the case of like half of these, show seating. So the submarines, they're submarines. There are 8 ships in the fleet. And they were eventually painted yellow in 1986, and so they would look more like research submarines.
The Seas with Nemo and Friends have clammobiles that are a lot like the aerial ride vehicles, only the doors open in front of you instead of just sliding into a bench.
Yeah, like an elevator.
Yes. The Finding Nemo show in Animal Kingdom has bench seating. Then
because that would be glimpsing it from a YouTube video. That
the video is hard to tell. That's my recollection of it. Yeah. When I went.
Turtle Talk at California Adventure has individual theater chairs for the adults and anybody who doesn't want to sit on the floor, and there's a floor seating area up front for kids.
And Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot has metal bench seating with floor seating area for kids.
All right, so the storyline and route, starting with the Nemo submarines. So it's kind of weird. So we talked about this before, how it's educational, but then it turns into Finding Nemo. So about 2 minutes in, based on the YouTube video, you see Darla kind of doing an underwater scuba dive thing. But then they kind of ignore that and narrate about the underwater volcano and this like ancient civilization and talk about coral reefs. And then they're like, oh, and now we're going to use the hydrophone so we can listen. And that's when it really becomes Finding Nemo. And it doesn't follow the original plot of the movie. It's kind of like a follow-up to the original plot of the movie. And it seems like Nemo is ditching school, and that's why Marlin is looking for him. Marlin refers to Nemo being lost again. So in the process of you following Marlin and Dory trying to look for Nemo, you go through all these memorable scenes from the movie, like the EAC, the sharks, the anglerfish complete with jump scare, and the jellyfish. And you do finally make it to the undersea volcano, where you get a recreation of Nemo going over Mount Wanahakalugi, but with an actual volcano. So it's kind of weird, I think, if you're trying to be like, it's telling the story of the movie, but no, it's not really.
So for the Seas with Nemo and Friends, you start by passing by Nemo and Marlin, the clownfish, Nemo's dad, playing in the reef, and then Mr. Ray is taking the fish kids to school, but they've lost Nemo. You pass by more coral reefs where Marlin and Dory are looking for Nemo. Then you get the jellyfish scene, the glowing light bulb fish scene, and
the anglerfish.
Anglerfish, thank you. And one of them nearly attacks Marlin and Dory, although that effect is not always working. So fingers crossed it is. Then you see Bruce and his friends. Then you go through a bubble tunnel with Crush, Squirt, and other sea turtles, and then into the aquarium viewing area where Dory and Marlin are reunited with Nemo, and we see all the fish friends singing Big Blue World. Cute. So for the Finding Nemo show at Animal Kingdom, The Tank Gang are being released from Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, aka the Marine Life Institute, after they are being found in the ocean in plastic bags. They reminisce on how they got there, and in doing so, they retell the story of Finding Nemo, which is condensed down, obviously. It's not the full length of the movie.
Yeah. And Turtle Talk is just for both coasts. It's an interactive show with Crush the Sea Turtle. And he will answer guest questions about basically anything. You can ask Crush literally anything. And it was updated to include characters from Finding Dory. And if you ask Crush where Dory is, you get a special ending to the show that includes Dory. If you ask Crush where Nemo is, he'll give you a real answer to where you can find Nemo. Yeah, it's fun. You can literally ask Crush anything. Yeah. Also, CJ, you so totally rock.
Dude!
Thank you.
If you know, you know.
Yep. For exiting these attractions, the Nemo subs, it's nothing really special. You just disembark and exit off the dock into Tomorrowland, or you can go to Fantasyland because it's like right there.
For the Seas with Nemo and Friends, the ride, you're exiting into the aquarium. And for the Finding Nemo show at Animal Kingdom, you're just let out into Animal Kingdom. Shout out to the bathrooms over there. Really good bathrooms to go to.
All right. DCA Turtle Talk, you exit the theater into the Animation Academy. It's not outside. That entire area is indoors and really nice, frankly.
Yeah, and Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot, you go out into the aquarium, same thing, indoors, air conditioned, cool place to hang out.
Great news on height requirements. None of these attractions have one.
Ayo. Okay, so for fireworks, Nemo submarines are open. Seas with Nemo and Friends open. Finding Nemo show, not applicable. Turtle Talk with Crush is open during World of Color at DCA and also open during Epcot's nighttime show. Although sometimes those shows take place after the park closes or like right as the park is closing. So
yeah. All of these attractions are open during the rain, and I'd say all of them are great to go through during the rain because they're inside. So yes. Escape the rain.
Yes, and the heat. So Lightning Lane, not for the submarines and not for Turtle Talk with Crush at DCA. However, all of the Walt Disney World versions of these do have Lightning Lane.
Do you think that Lightning Lane is necessary for the Seas with Nemo and Friends and Turtle Talk?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
However, I will say, we've used the Lightning Lane for the show and the Seas with Nemo and Friends because we use DAS, the Disability Pass.
Right.
So for the show, it allows us like to not have to line up so far in advance. And then for the Seas with Nemo and Friends, it's just like less of a walk. That's a really long queue. Really, really, like physically long queue. The wait is never long, but the line itself is like crazy long. Like I would say if you stretched out that queue and like Haunted Mansion's queue, I almost think the Finding Nemo queue would be longer. Because there's a lot of like back and forths and just like, stretch it out side by side. I think the Nemo queue would physically be longer than Haunted Mansion.
All right. It's a 10-minute wait because it's a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right.
And of course, none of these have single rider. No.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping you from going alone on any of these, but there is no dedicated line for them.
Yeah, no.
All right, so that wraps up everything factual. CJ,
it's the truth, it's actual.
Do you find this satisfactual?
I'm not sure where that came from. It just happened.
No, I was absolutely leading you into it. That's where it came from. It
really?
Worked. My evil plan worked.
Was it really your plan? Or did you say that? Oh my gosh.
It really was.
Wow.
So how do we want to do the showdown for this?
I think we need to, since this is the IP season, I think we need to decide which of these attractions best represents the IP.
Okay.
And I think you and I can take that question however we want it to mean. Like, if you want to look at it as like, how faithful is it to the movie, or how much is it in spirit of what the movie's about, or the message that you think the movie wants people to get, so be it.
Okay. So, I don't really feel like I can say our usual bit about just one side stand out above the crowd. But, you know, does one side tell the story above the rest? CJ, let me know what you think.
Well, should we do like a 1 through 5 rating for this?
Ooh, that's tough. I feel like we should do a 1 through 4, because if we're talking about the spirit of the IP and telling the story, then I think the turtle talks can be the same.
I have one turtle talk that's better than the other.
Okay, yeah, is it Epcot because you get to see real fish?
No, but it's considered that.
Okay, we can do a 1 to 5 to answer the question of what tells the story the best, with special considerations possibly taken for turtle talks.
Okay, let me set up the document so I can type in our responses here.
Okay.
Okay, my number 1 for which of these attractions best represents the IP, I am going with the Seas with Nemo and Friends at Epcot, the ride, not the pavilion, the ride. Also, side note, when I was typing that, I almost wrote the seats with Nemo and Friends, which will come into play a little bit later. I will explain that momentarily. Anyways, if I'm just looking at like what represents this IP, I think it kind of has a little bit of everything. It has a really good cue. You know, it takes you from like the human world on land into the sea, and you're thrust into, he's going to school and Mr. Ray can't find him, and Dory's there trying to help Marlin, and you go through all the iconic scenes of the movie, tied up in like, it wraps up with like real fish. And I think that like brings some learning into it, and allows you to like experience it. You know, what kid sees that and doesn't say, I want to see the fish? They all want to see the fish at the end of the ride. So I think it's cool that it leads guests to wanting more from the pavilion after the ride's over.
Okay.
What's your number 1?
My number 1 is the show. CJ, you're aware of this, but I don't think it's ever come up on the podcast before that I am a huge fan of musical theater. But I promise that is not the reason why that I am putting the show at number 1. I think it does a really good job of telling the story of Finding Nemo. And it does a really beautiful job of telling the story. Like, visually, it is amazing to watch. And I am kind of disappointed in my past self for not taking the time to go see it ever before. Like, I know this about me. I know I love musicals and musical theater and like the spectacle of theater. Like, why did I like just discount it? So
I also want to point out that you were sad you missed Everest the last time you were here.
I did miss Everest the last time I was there, and I'm really upset.
I think your next park is Animal Kingdom.
Yeah. Also, Louis hasn't been to Animal Kingdom since the Pandora stuff reopened. So yeah, if my next trip is with him, he needs to go there because he hasn't been on any of the Pandora rides. So, anyways,
he was with. Wait, no, I thought he was with us when we did the Wild Africa trek.
Pandora wasn't open then.
Yes, it was.
What? Then why hasn't Louis been on it?
I don't know.
Okay, that was in 2016. When did Pandora?
Oh.
Pandora opened in 2017. Your brain is warped, CJ.
Oh no, my brain is warped.
Yeah, that wasn't open.
Oops, my bad.
That's why. But that was actually the last time that Louis was at Animal Kingdom.
It's been almost 10 years. That's
wow. That was
years.
Our honeymoon. So you just hit me with you've been married for almost 10 years, pretty much. So, anyways, enough about Louis. We're not talking about him. He's making me dinner right now. But I picked the show because you don't have to know anything about Finding Nemo to go in and watch that show and follow along and understand like the plot of what's happening.
Cool.
So, what's your number 2, CJ?
My number 2 is the submarines. I think it's really cool. First of all, you're in a submarine, and I like that you're like with the scuba divers, and then all of a sudden you're thrust into the Nemo story. And it's kind of like it's familiar, but it's a little bit different. And I like the special effects that they use to tell the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think you and I have different reasonings behind our rankings, but we'll get into that later. My number 2 is the Seas, the Epcot ride. And I think you're right about it telling a story pretty well. And you get to see the real fish, which is really cool. But you can go in with little Nemo knowledge and follow along pretty easily. And also, even if you're not following along, it is visually really cool. And the fish. You get to see the fish.
The fish.
The fish.
So,
and I'll just say that I had something else as my number 2 originally, and I had a very heavy internal debate while you were talking about the Seas, about, okay, like, what do I want? Like, how am I ranking this?
Number 3 for me is the Nemo show at Animal Kingdom. I don't really like musicals. I'm just going to throw that out there. You know,
we're very different people. It's okay.
Also, I think the detail about them being found in the ocean in plastic bags is really weird and really specific. Well, like I don't think they needed to include that in order to retell the Nemo story. And also, this isn't the Tank Gang story. This is about Finding Nemo.
Okay, well, the Tank Gang only appear like between scenes to be like, oh, that happened, and then we're moving on to this thing. Whoa. Like,
I know.
And the other thing is that, like, the plastic bags, it tells you that this is a retelling that takes place, you know, after the movie ended.
Okay, that's fine, but I just don't like the Tank Gang.
Okay.
I really don't like those characters. I don't know why. I just don't find... This is my own personal problem. I don't find Nemo relatable. I don't find Dory relatable. Like, I just really don't like the characters in this movie, and the Tank Gang is at the top of CJ's do not like list.
Okay, I feel like now is a good time to mention to everybody that CJ is terrified of the ocean.
I am terrified of the ocean, and I'm scared of fish and seaweed and wet sand and shells.
So this is why CJ's had a tough time with this episode.
Yeah, I like eating fish and seaweed, but yeah, I just have a hard time connecting with the plastic bag fish storyline.
Okay.
And it's a weird detail that I don't think needs to be included.
Okay. Well, my number 3, I put Turtle Talk at Epcot because, like I said earlier, you get to see the fish, and that puts it above Turtle Talk at DCA for me. Seeing the real fish, and hold on, I'm not done yet. Seeing the real fish and little kids being like, oh, wow, we just talked to a fish, but here's, like, the real fish, and I feel like that's really cool for a kid. And I feel like you don't really have to know Finding Nemo to experience Turtle Talk with Crush and still have a positive experience with it. Because you're just talking to a character, and that's really cool.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did you change your ranking, like, midway through? Like, you retyped some stuff?
I mentioned when I was talking about the Seas that I had an internal debate about where to put the Seas, and I moved that around my Turtle Talks.
Okay, we'll get to it. Okay. I'm going to go over my number 4 and number 5 at the same time.
Okay.
My
Turtle Talks.
Yes, my number 4 is Turtle Talk at DCA.
Okay.
Because it has real seats. Yes, and not metal benches. Why in 2023 do we still have metal benches in any Disney show?
You're right. Why? That is completely unacceptable. But like I mentioned earlier, you and I are having different reasonings behind why we're ranking things. I think you're ranking them on the things the way that you like them. And I'm ranking them on how well they tell the story of Nemo and how well you can understand what's happening, whether or not you've seen Nemo.
Okay, well, I think that DCA doesn't necessarily need the added aquarium to tell the story of Nemo through Turtle Talk, because take away the aquariums from Turtle Talk at Epcot, and there's still the second largest aquarium in the United States right there that you can go see before you go wait for the show. Like, to me, it doesn't make that big of a difference. So, Turtle Talk with Epcot is... Turtle Talk with Epcot. Turtle Talk with Crush at Epcot is number 5. Like, yeah, the little aquariums are cool, but it's really to entertain the children because the waiting area isn't very big and you don't want them running around.
Yep. My number 4 was Turtle Talk at DCA because there's no fish. I would have ranked these the same, but you told me I couldn't, so Epcot got the edge because of the fish.
Okay.
And my number 5 is the submarines, because I don't think it tells the story of Nemo very well at all, and I think it is a complete mess in terms of storytelling, where you have this, like, oh, it's an ancient civilization, and oh, the underwater volcano, and oh, these fish are talking, and we're never going to speak of it again. Like, I just think that it's messy in terms of including the IP and this classic attraction. So that's my reasoning. And because you asked, so I originally had Turtle Talk higher, and I put the C's between Turtle Talk and the subs, and then I moved the C's back to number 2, and then I moved them back to number 4, and then I finally settled them on number 2 again. So yes, I did do some moving around because I wasn't fully decided when you started talking.
What was your internal dialogue?
It was basically me asking about the story of Finding Nemo and how much you need to have seen Finding Nemo to understand and appreciate the attractions, and going through that and placing them in order based on minimal Nemo to all the Nemo foreknowledge.
See, and I think that's partially why I have Turtle Talk down at the bottom, both of them, because, like, without any context, it's just a turtle.
Yeah, but it's a really cool turtle.
Well, it is. It has nothing, like, you could replace that with a lot of different characters. You could do Sebastian or Flounder or something.
That'd be really cool.
It would be cool, but I'm just saying, like, it's just an offshoot of Nemo. It's not really, like, forwarding the story of Nemo in any way.
Yeah, but you don't need to know the story of Nemo to still be like, wow, that was really cool.
And I don't think you need to know the story of Nemo for the Seas with Nemo and Friends, submarines, or the show either, because I think that tells the story of Nemo decently well.
See, I agree with you about that on the show and the Seas. You don't need to know the story of Nemo on the show and the Seas. The subs is just a mess. It's just a mess.
But they do say he's lost again, so you already know he was lost once.
But now he's found.
Okay. Was blind, but now he can see. He can see.
With Nemo and Friends.
All right. Anyways, okay, so just to recap, CJ's number 1 is the Seas with Nemo and Friends, the ride. Number 2 is the submarine. Number 3 is the show at Animal Kingdom. 4 is Turtle Talk at DCA. 5 is Turtle Talk at Epcot.
And Allie said the show is number 1. Number 2 is the Seas at Epcot. Number 3 is Turtle Talk at Epcot. Number 4 is Turtle Talk at DCA. And number 5 is the submarines. So I think we can agree that Turtle Talk at DCA can sit comfortably in the number 4 position.
That's the only thing we agree on.
Yep.
This whole episode.
I think we agree overall that our number 1 was both East Coast, so...
Yeah. East Coast wins this one.
I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe the real friends were the fish we ate along the way.
Whoa. Fish are friends?
Not
that
food.
That are also food.
Okay. I think on that note, it is time to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you all for joining us as we discussed the fish that are friends but not food. The Nemo and the Tank Gang and the Dory and the Marlin and Mr. Ray and all of them that you can find on the Nemo attractions at all the Disney parks in the United States, except for the Hollywood Studios. and Magic Kingdom. Anyways, so thanks for joining us. Follow us on Instagram at Park2ParkPod with the number 2. Send us an email, park2parkpod@gmail.com, also with the number 2. Tell your friends about the podcast. Tell your enemies about the podcast. Let us know what you think about Finding Nemo in the parks. Watch us on YouTube. Did I miss anything on that telling people what to do, CJ?
Smash that subscribe button.
That too. What are we talking about on our next episode, CJ?
So our next episode, my good friends Nathan and Coletta are joining us because they just got back from Disneyland. It was their second visit, but it has been since like 2008 they were first there. And from talking to them in real life, like they did not do Disneyland very well on their first visit and they don't remember much. So we're going to find out about their like really long visit to Disneyland they took this summer.
Yeah. I'll say that we've already talked to them, and I thought this was a very interesting perspective, so don't miss this one. It's really good.
Yeah, and they're Disney World locals like me, so.
All right. Anything else for our loyal listeners?
Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. See ya.
See ya.